Welcome to the Sister Mentors podcast. This is an exciting time for us. Sister Mentors has been nurturing the next generation of women of color leaders for 25 years. Our work centers the needs and dreams of women and girls of color in the face of deep-seated institutional inequities found in the educational system. The lives of over 100 women and girls of color have been changed by Sister Mentors. These women and girls have evolved in astounding ways, and with the help of Sister Mentors, they are on their way to earning higher education degrees, particularly PhDs. On this podcast, I will speak to some of the mentors and mentees about their lives and educational journeys. These women and girls will tell their moving stories of who they are, where they come from, and how Sister Mentors was instrumental in keeping them on their educational paths. In this episode, we get to meet one of the many mentees Sister Mentors has helped to discover their true potential. Margie Obeng has just recently received her master's and still has so much more that she wants to accomplish. Originally from Ghana, Margie came to her first Sister Mentors meeting when she was just 14 years old and cultivated a strong and dynamic relationship with her mentor, Fanta Aw, as well as many other young women. I am your host, Camila Adams. Thanks for joining me as we celebrate the bold past and fierce future of Sister Mentors and count down to the 25th anniversary here on the Sister Mentors podcast.
We are counting down to Sister Mentors' 25th anniversary in fall 2022.
Margie Obeng, welcome to the Sister Mentors podcast. You are looking lovely this morning.
Thank you. So are you? Happy to be with you.
Oh, thank you. And likewise, this is going to be amazing. I know you just recently received your master's, yes?
Yes, I did.
Congratulations. How does that feel?
Thank you. I'm just happy to be done, but it does feel great. Super tough, being in school during the pandemic. So I'm honestly just really grateful. Honestly proud of all the graduates because we were in school during a very unprecedented time, but we completed, our studies. So I'm very proud of myself and all my peers that made it out.
Yeah. As if, working on your master's degree and, going to school isn't stressful enough. Then you guys get this added layer of, isolation and, just scared for the world and, just trying to survive. But you did it. You didn't just make it through, like you excelled.
Thank you. Yeah, it was not easy. So it goes without saying, but yeah, thank you.
So let's get into find out like where that strength and everything and courage comes from. Like, who are you? Who are your people? Where do you grow up? Like, who raised you?
Yeah, sure. So, honestly, I dedicated my degree to my father who passed in 2015. And I promised him that I would, continue my studies and go to grad school and I guess complete that second step of my education. I was the first in my family to go to college and I'm the first to obtain a master's degree. So it was a really big deal. But my family's originally from Ghana. I was born in Ghana, actually, and came to the U.S. When I was 2 years old via the diversity lottery. And my name wasn't selected. My mom petitioned for me, so I was able to come as an infant with her. So that was great. Or at the time, I was an infant, and after all the processing and everything happened, I came to the U.S. As a baby, practically with my family in Alexandria City, and grew up there. And went to elementary, middle school, high school there, all the way through. So I'm an Alexandrian, through and through, a proud Titan. My high school was the high school from Remember the Titans. So I'm very proud of where I grew up, not just because, we're in a movie, but because Alexandria is such a special place. I actually read about Alexandria's diversity randomly during undergrad. And for me, it was a norm. I grew up around people from all walks of life. Like we were very culturally diverse and had so many countries and languages represented. And that was my norm. I never knew anything but that. I grew up with people from Pakistan, from Ethiopia, from Sierra Leone, from the Philippines, like we had everyone and anyone. It wasn't a majority, this population or this demographic growing up, but mostly Black and brown, I'll say.
I don't think that's something that's widely known or even thought of, because I know I would have never had guessed that about.
Yeah.
Was there any particular reason that you know of, like, or what was the impetus for your family to move from Ghana, to come from Ghana?
That's a great question. It's funny you asked that, because I asked my dad that a lot, because, we were pretty comfortable in Ghana at the time. My dad was a civil servant and he worked for the local government. But he wanted a new opportunity for us. Initially, he wanted to join Ghana's Navy, but recognized that he'd have to kind of uproot the family in a way that he didn't want to. So he never did that. He chose to take the path of, being a family man versus, joining the military at that time, and really set us up. And I think it was just like hey, there's this opportunity. We see people going. We went during that wave of immigration in the 90s when a lot of West Africans were either seeking asylum or were coming via the diversity lottery. So my parents were just like, hey, people are going, let's give it a chance. I think this would be good for, our family. And my dad decided, he kind of went backwards. So I was the first child to go, and I'm the last of 8. And he worked his way backwards from there.
Because it took 8 years for the rest of her siblings to come to the United States, Margie spent most of her childhood as an only child. But she wasn't disconnected. She knew her siblings and knew her culture. Her parents made sure of that. So when Margie did get the opportunity to go back to her homeland of Ghana, it was as though she had never left.
Unfortunately, I never got a chance to go back to Ghana until after I graduated from undergrad. That was the first time I went back home.
Wow.
Because my dad was not willing to sacrifice. Like, you have to go, when you go back home, you have to go for like a month.
Oh, wow.
Or 6 weeks. And he was not willing to sacrifice that time out of school. Even in the summers, I was still studying or doing something. So we just kept putting it off. I was in a program. I had an internship. So, yeah.
Man, okay. Wow. So what were your, so many questions. What were your thoughts, and what was it when you first went back to Ghana? Like, how was that experience for you?
It was really cool. I think honestly, I was a bit stressed because at the time my father was sick, so I didn't want to go, but it was his dream to see me go. He really wanted to complete that because he did a lot of work to make sure I knew my culture intimately. I knew the history intimately, and I really was grounded in who I was. I was never one of those kids that was like, well, my parents are from Ghana. And I was like, I grew up here, but I'm Ghanaian. I'm from Ghana. So, I knew that it wasn't we need to get her reconnected to her roots and for her to know where she's from, or, she's going to leave and then forget, who she's from. Similar to like when people leave their local communities and it's like, you don't know where you're from. You have to have roots,
Right.
But it was a great experience. I think I took everything with stride, honestly, coming from this super westernized world and trying to understand like different parts of culture that might not translate, that might not be one-to-one, and just quickly understanding how things like worked in Ghana. I think I felt the most home when I went to my mom's hometown because in Ghanaian culture, specifically in Ashanti culture, you are what your mother is. So whatever tribal group your mom is from, that's what you are considered to be. Okay. So my mother is Fanta. She's from the Slave Coast. So I went to Elamina. That's the city my mom is from. Went to the slave castles there, visited there, went to the beach there. And I felt so, I don't know, I wouldn't say like as cliche as it sounds, I felt very at peace, but I felt like I really knew my people in that moment. Like, I remember there was a point where I was standing on the bridge and my brother actually took a picture of me. I was standing by myself, just looking over the bridge, looking at the water, feeling the breeze, kind of taking in the moment, taking in all the history I just learned, and just like really feeling the energy there. And it was just so beautiful. So like just tranquil, like even though there's so much chaos we just like had to consume, and it was honestly very overwhelming. I still felt very happy and proud that at least, for once I really got to see where I was from and understanding that and like just kind of letting it sink in. So it was great. The first time I went, I didn't have as much like fun because I was with family and they're like very like, we got to be careful. But in terms of like just getting to know Ghana, the food, all of that, like just quickly picking up things.
Yeah.
My brother was just laughing at me because he was like, you would have swore you grew up here because you hailed down the people, like the vendors, like with ease now. Like I was really shy at first. And I was like, listen, I need those plantain chips. So I got to get your attention. So I quickly learned, what to do. And after that, I went to Ghana almost every year since then. I've been,
oh, wow.
Minus the pandemic. Yeah. So I kept going.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that you were able to do that. And, we all have a longing or at least a question mark in us to find out like our roots of where we're from. While Margie was in middle school, she participated in Project Step Out, a project focused on navigating the huge increase in teen pregnancies in Alexandria. While looking for ways to lower these numbers, it became evident that young girls need to know their worth and potential at an early age. Empowerment became the focus, making SisterMentors the next step.
It was a great opportunity for me because it was the first time, I would say, in that environment where girls were really starting to understand what it was they liked about themselves. Mm. Like, do you like yourself? Are you confident? And that lack of confidence mostly was why these girls were turning to these intimate relationships. They're home and they're not being told they're beautiful and someone else is telling them they're beautiful, right? And someone else is making them feel wanted. So there was this whole other emotional, sociological aspect of this teenage pregnancy boom that was going unaddressed. Mm. And that was really the root cause. Like, yes, we can provide contraception. Yes, we can provide childcare, but we need to get under the root cause to make sure that you're making a decision for yourself and you're not being pressured into doing something that you didn't even want to do. Because that was really what was happening. So at Project Step Out, we were told that there was this other opportunity. And I was like, oh, okay, because, that felt like a little, the girls chat, the table conversations we're having. And it was really deep. Like, I look back and I'm like, wow, like we had some really deep conversations, people I had never really talked to in school. Were just sharing so much about themselves in these spaces, such a safe space for young girls. And girls felt more confident saying, no, I'm not into that. Like, I'm not interested in that. Like, I'm just trying to focus on myself. And it was what that empowerment was needed. So I was like, I feel good coming to this, I'll see about this other opportunity. Then they said it was on the weekends. And I was like, hold on. Now, hold on Saturdays? I don't know about Saturday, I enjoy my Saturday. I watch cartoons. Right. I go to my cousin's house. Saturday? But then they said there was food. Yeah, that's how I became a mentee in SisterMentors. Something that's so powerful about like the idea or concept of like mentorship is like this close, intimate relationship, like two or more people can have. And it's like that attention you're getting and the way that like people are helping you learn more about yourself. And I think, with a lot of these programs that you see like young people participate in, a lot of times they're not really given space or agency, self-agency in what they want to do or what they want to focus on. And I think while SisterMentors, our mentoring sessions were really focused on like key things, the main thing was like, well, what do you want for yourself? Where do you see yourself? Not where your parents told you to, not where I'm telling you to be. Where do you want to be and what do you see for yourself? And during those conversations or during those mentoring sessions, that's when I really learned that I had a confidence issue. I had this little voice in my head always telling me I couldn't do things. And it wasn't just because of SisterMentors that I realized this. My dad would always say this, whenever I wanted to go after things, I'd immediately say all the reasons why I couldn't instead of all the reasons why I could. And he would always ask me, like, who told you couldn't? Mm-hmm. Who told you no? Like, he said, there's always a possibility that you're going to get a no, but the chance you automatically negate those chances when you don't even try for things. Right. And, in my sessions with Fanta, my mentor, she would ask me, like, what are your goals? Like, what goals do you have for the future? Like, personally, what do you want to gain for yourself? And I would write out these goals, and immediately when we started talking them out, like what steps I needed to take, especially for like my academic goals, I was like, well, I'm just not good at math. So I don't think I can really get an A in math. I think maybe at most I might get like a B-. And she's like, well, why? Like, let's focus on that. Like, why do you think that? And I learned that I had to really work on my self-esteem. Like, I won't get anywhere if I'm already thinking of the ways that I can't do things. And we really got to understand how, just as a society, how Black and brown girls and other girls of color and other girls from underrepresented groups, why we feel the way we do and why we're socialized to think in ways that maybe our non-POC peers don't. And really getting underneath that, understanding the importance of having representation. I think for me, that was what really kept me coming back, is seeing women of color in positions that I wanted to be in the future, seeing them be so successful, so intelligent, and unwavering in their confidence and ability. You know, it was amazing to see these women who were also honest about their struggles and, like, you know, weren't these adult figures in my life that are just telling me how to do things. And, you know, that's what we're used to Monday through Friday in school. Right. People telling us how to be, people commenting on us, you know. But for once we could just be, and any form of us, like any form we took, we were accepted and celebrated. Even if we had like moments where, you know, like, you know, with teenagers are going to have their moments, their pitfalls, right, their moments of attitude and all of that, we were still accepted.
Right. That's important because, you know, teenagers are like, shoot, I don't even believe like we're all not, our brains aren't fully even developed until like our mid-20s. So it's like, right, like teenagers, they don't know, like there's so much going on. Like there's so much they don't know about the world. There's so much they're learning. There's so much going on chemically inside of their bodies, like hormones and just brain chemistry in general. So it's just like, so you always have to just like people talk about teenagers are quote unquote terrible, but it's like, you know,
it's a rough time.
I know it. Like things are not easy. And like there's all these inside and outside variables that are affecting them. And we always got to know, like, give them grace. Give other people grace.
Yeah.
So when you joined SisterMentors, did you know at that point, did you have any idea what you wanted to be when you grew up or what you wanted to do with your life or anything like that?
I mean, I had some ideas, but I was like, college, how am I going to do that? I don't know about that. You know, I never even had stepped foot on a college campus for SisterMentors. I think I briefly did when I went to my cousin's graduation, but I wasn't really on campus for that, you know? And I didn't really have like these big goals. I knew like, oh, you know, maybe I want to do this or maybe I want to do that. But I never really had like this like strong energy around, okay, I'm going to go to college. Like I can see this for myself. Until I went on my first college visit. And that's like what, you know, because that's one of the facets of the program is we have an annual college visit. And that's what my dad loved the most. He loved that it was so education, you know, oriented. He was like, anything that gets you closer, we're doing it. So, you know, I had joined and it was like a big deal. You know, you had to attend mentoring sessions in order to, you know, make it to this college visit. And I remember being so excited because we were going to New York City. And I think I had never been to New York at the time. I don't recall going to New York like before then. So it was also going to be my first time in New York City. Wow. And we were going to stay you know, off campus. We're going to visit the schools. We're going to visit Columbia University and Barnard College. And I was so excited. I remember my sister brought me a new like little carry-on suitcase. Cute. You know, I was it was cheetah print. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to profile on these people. You know, I was ready. Like, listen, I was like, oh, I have my questions in tow. I had a little folder that I would keep all the little, you know, papers and things that I would get. I was ready. Okay. And we get to the school, we pull up to the school, and I forgot my permission slip. And I was devastated. The tears again, you know, teenagers. Right, yes. Oh my God, I'm not going to get to go. You know, I was a very absent-minded kid, still working on that in adulthood. So my dad was like, what am I going to do with you? Oh my goodness. He's just like, this child, I can't. So, you know, anyway, long story short, I did end up getting the permission slip. Dr. Lewis worked with me and was like, we're not going to leave you behind. And we went, and I was just so it's like, I don't know, it felt like a movie scene where, you know, like the small town kid hits the big city and sees the big city lights. And that was me. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to be a college kid, like seeing the students, you know, on their way to class, like bustling through the city. We also visited NYU as well. And like just seeing, you know, how the school was like kind of in the city. So you had to travel, you know, to get to class. I love the idea of like going to class, and it just seemed so like official and important. I was like, I see this. I saw it for myself. I was like, I see myself pumping to class. I see myself taking notes. Like I just started to fall in love with the idea of being in college. I think honestly it was a very romanticized idea, but nonetheless, it like sold me. And from there, I was like, yes, I'm going to college. Like I see this for myself. This is what everyone should be doing. This is amazing. Like from talking to students and asking them questions, I just was so, awesome. And it was like a whole world that I didn't even know existed. And I was like, wow, I want a part of this. So then after that, everything I was doing was geared towards going to college. And I was just really like, I really fell in love with the idea that like, I can do this, not just because, you know, I'm smart or I'm capable. I see people who look like me doing this. You know, I met with people who are like, yeah, I'm from like this area and I applied and, you know, talking about financial aid. So I was like, okay, even if I'm worried about how my family will be able to afford this, because we saw these big tuition cost numbers, but these students were telling us how they found money for school. So I was like, okay, this could happen. Like, this is really cool. Yeah. So then after that, I just was, you know, I made my college list, like what schools were my dream schools or my reach schools. I started planning out when I was going to take my tests, what grades I needed to get. I started getting more involved in school and all of that. Like any opportunity I could do, I was in it.
You legit had a plan and went forth.
Yes.
So once you finally got to college, which college did you go to and what was the experience?
So funny, I am going to a school that I never even had on my list. And one of my, I was able to get into a scholarship program called the Coin Project through the Neuro Foundation. They basically help fund the next generation of social justice activists. So my community-based organization, Tenants and Workers United, was one of the CBOs I was selected across the country. I want to go to Syracuse. My mom and dad were like, that's too far. If something happens to you, we will not be able to get there within like less than 4 or 5 hours.
Wow.
So Penn State was a compromise. Right. So I ended up going to Penn State. And, you know, I visited campus through an opportunity for accepted underrepresented students. So when I went, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so diverse. Oh my goodness. This is just like Alexandria. This is no different. You know, I wasn't paying attention to what I was seeing on campus.
Right.
I was only paying attention to what was like around me, you know? Clearly, frontal lobe wasn't fully developed. I wasn't seeing the big picture. You know, it was a huge culture shock for me, to say the least. I was one of 2 Black people on my entire floor, and we were both in the same room. And the amount of microaggressions I faced my freshman year, like it was just my freshman year, I had, you know, figuring out what my major is going to be. I just ended up switching from poli-sci to education and public policy. I was away from home, you know, for the first time in this way, but I didn't really struggle with that, but just getting accustomed to this new environment. There was a lot of microaggressions. The Sandusky scandal was also my freshman year. So it was honestly, I almost left school. I was very overwhelmed. And I think, you know, just navigating a lot of people who were so unfamiliar with people who looked like me was an exhausting experience. And I would talk to Dr. Lewis a lot about it. Like, I cannot. But, you know, I was thankful that like I was very, you know, because a lot of people say that like they either really got to know who they were or they ran away from their identity at these PWIs. And I would say I ran towards my identity even more. Right. I'm so thankful that I was very grounded and rooted in who I was and had some like real legitimate core values and beliefs. I had a foundation that I'm very thankful for, because a lot of the situations I found myself in, I was very able to protect myself or respond to them.
Right.
Like going through it was very difficult for me, but I was very quick to let me correct you.
Right.
Let me remind you.
Mm-hmm.
And, I saw people who didn't have that same sort of energy and tenacity in them. And would just like reach out no. So when people confuse me with my one Black roommate, I would correct them.
Mm-hmm.
And I would affirm it. I'd be like, I know who you are. I think you should try a little harder to remember who I am.
Right. I mean, in a sea of white faces.
I didn't have the language then to explain that what you just did was a microaggression.
Right.
But I at least knew that it was wrong and I was not going to allow myself to be subjected to certain behavior.
Exactly.
So I would call my dad and I'd be like, Daddy, these people are crazy. This is what happened. He would just tell me, be calm, keep going. So I found community. I found my Black and brown people on campus quickly and swiftly. And I made sure to be as involved in multicultural happenings at school as I could be.
And that was important. And it was a good thing that you were able to navigate that in such a way and to recognize what you needed to do to keep your groundings.
Oh, yeah.
So with all of this, why did you choose to go forth and get a master's degree?
Okay. I mean, initially, I did not want to go back to school. I was honestly burnt out from undergrad. And, I had a lot going on. Towards the end of my academic career, or towards the end of undergrad, shortly after I lost my father, there was a lot of things, a lot of transitions happening in life. So I took a little break. And unfortunately, when I graduated, I got accepted into a teaching fellowship. But rescinded the offer because I just didn't feel ready to go away. I just felt like I needed some time to heal from the loss of my father and also just figure out life.
Yeah.
So I applied. I finally was like, you know what? I'm ready to go to grad school. I said I was going to do this thing. And I was honestly really motivated by my father. I was like, I said I would do this thing. I always said I would do it. I'm going to do it. But when I applied, I got waitlisted for the initial program I applied for. And I was devastated. I was so hurt and just thought maybe this isn't for me and I'm forcing it. So I remember I went to dinner with Fanta to catch up and talk. And I'm telling her, and she was like, so you're not going to apply again? I was like, no, I'm not going to apply again. She was like, well, I think you should apply to my program. And, she worked for, I believe at the time was an adjunct professor. I might be misquoting, but she was in the School of International Service at American, which was another a different department than the one I originally applied to. And she was like, because I did some work at Penn State with our Office of Global Programs. She's like, I've read about the work that you guys did there. I know the director there. They spoke so highly of you. I think you'd be a great fit here. These are some of the options you could take, and I really want you to apply. I got accepted into the School of International Service in the intercultural and international communication program, and my concentration was in global equity and inclusion.
Wow. What are you passionate about? And did SisterMentors help drive that passion in any way for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm really passionate about equity in general and being intersectional with my equity lens. I think I see different points in my life where I added layers to how I view the world and just seeing things and kind of taking out these rose-colored lenses, because I went through different transitions, I guess, in my thinking. But SisterMentors is where I was introduced indirectly to the idea of intersectionality and understanding how identity intersects and how it impacts us. Because the thing that was always really affirmed for us was that we're not just young girls, we are young girls of color, which makes our experiences in life very different than our peers. And based on certain communities we are a part of, that also impacts, how we're perceived, how we perceive ourselves, how we navigate the world. So we would have conversations like, okay, being a Black girl, these are some of the impacts, or being a young girl of color and also being Muslim. how are Muslim peers being affected and treated and things of that nature. And it started to kind of open my eyes to the impact of racism, of gender violence, of things of that nature. You know, we weren't having these conversations with a lot of these buzzwords we hear today, right. But reading, you know, Alice Walker, you know, being introduced to people like that at such a young age really helped me. And I think that's what my passion is. I think I'm very passionate about specifically the experience of Black people, specifically Black women, and all those who identify as women and what that looks like. And how I can, whatever space I'm occupying, how am I making sure to live out my values and live out those truths, and also help guide people to understand what their personal brand looks like when it comes to equity and ways of being. And that's what I do in my work now in cohort spaces, in educational spaces and philanthropy, really getting people to understand, like, what is racial equity, one, but what does racial equity look like for you in your world and at your organization? What are we prescribing to, and what are we resistant to, and what does that look like? And just really continuing to add on to that foundation and using that as a means of like operating in different spaces. And I think for me now, I'm like really heavy in the organizational effectiveness space. But again, all of these things I've learned from, you know, Kimberly Crenshaw, Bell Hooks, just all of these Black feminist, Black womanist thought leaders has really impacted me and helped me, and has given me a foundation, understanding Pan-African theory, you know, from my father, and what that looks like to be a Pan-Africanist, and what those leaders were doing, and all of that, just really holding on to that as much as I can in the world that we live in, where there's so much nuance, and really understanding and just continuing to open my eyes to things that I might not be seeing and things I might be doing or be complicit to, and just operating as best as I can given a lot of conditions that I had no hand in, you know, and understanding that like balance. So, I mean, I'm thankful that I've had all these different experiences. I think I've had a very eclectic and different path than most people. But it's now that I guess, you know, we all say this, you know, once you get older, everything just starts to make sense and everything just starts to fall into place. Like, I get it now.
That's awesome. Tell me about your mentor, Fanta. Like, what was that? What was your relationship like?
She's amazing. I really look up to her and respect her so much. She's one of the people I can definitely say I am blessed to have in my life because of how much I related to her. She was there when I graduated this past May from American University because she actually works there and is served on their leadership team. So she works as she serves, as the Vice President of Undergraduate Enrollment, Campus Life, and Inclusive Excellence at AU. So she works and heads the leadership team there at Campus Life, and has done a lot of work around equity issues on campus and has responded to quite a few things. So, you know, I know she was really proud of me to see me walk across the stage. I actually got to hug her because she also was involved in my school, in the School of International Service. So she was an amazing mentor to me. At the time, that was when she was working to earn her doctorate, which she did. And it was just really great because she's also African. So we were able to really relate to some of the struggles of being an immigrant in this country and having that like push and pull between, I guess, being American and also, you know, our African identities. So there were some like culturally relevant things I would talk about, like with my upbringing, that I felt like she really understood intimately. So it was also like really beneficial for me to see an African woman who was like embodying a role that like I felt like I didn't see a lot of like older African women inhibit, and not like, and being okay with kind of rejecting the idea of you have to be, you know, a married, you know, a woman prescribing to like this specific set of gender roles. And like Fanta wasn't that. She was like an independent, educated boss. And I was like, I want to be like her. I literally want to be like her, you know? And I love how like she always pours into me, like even when I'm sure she's probably tapped on, has so many things she's navigating, especially, you know, position she holds and all of that. She always made space for me. During, you know, our mentoring sessions, that's when we were able to really get underneath some of the issues we were facing. And while, yes, we would talk a lot about, academic issues at the time, I was really struggling with math and science. I remember, making game plans around that. But beyond that, a lot of it was our personal development and the importance of having, representation, and I think even if you grew up in a family where everyone, went to school or, was very successful in life, and depending on what you deem as success, it's really different to have someone who is actually mentoring you, who like embodies a lot of the things you're aspiring to be. And seeing all of these women who, come from all walks of life, but were able to go to college, were able to then leave college and work, and continue their education in this way, that representation was so meaningful for me. And what's even funny, like, even though I had all of this, representation in front of me, so many women who had doctor in front of their name,
right.
I unfortunately never experienced having a educator of color in my during my undergraduate experience or my post, high school, post-secondary experience. I did not have a professor of color during my undergraduate experience. It wasn't until my last semester in grad school that I experienced the first woman of color to teach me.
Wow.
And that was at American in a global equity class. Dr. Wickfall Williams, who is now retired from the university, but was a tenured professor there, and it meant so much to me. So I think because of Sister Mentors, I was able to really embrace, having her as a professor, and really connecting with her, and really being able to just bond over identity and the intersectional experience that we both have had. So it meant a lot to me, but I think it meant even more to me because I understood the importance of representation and really connecting with women of color. I'm thankful that Dr. Lewis introduced me to her because I know she'll support me for life in any way she can.
Right on. And do you see yourself being a mentor, turning around and giving back, or are you already a mentor?
I mean, Dr. Lewis was like, I would love to, in order to do that, you have to take that next step towards, a PhD. And that's the thing.
Okay.
Oh, Dr. Lewis, I don't know. But, I don't want to say no because I think I said I didn't think I could get this master's and I did. So why can't I, go on to get my PhD? But I would love to. I would love to support. And even if I'm not a mentor, I definitely see myself maybe in the future supporting Sister Mentors through maybe serving on the board or another opportunity. I'm currently an alumna of the program, so I still engage in that facet of programming. But I definitely hope to maybe in the near future, take on a more formal role of mentoring. I think before this current role, when I was working and doing more direct service and supervising staff and things of that nature, definitely took on more of a mentorship role. But I think the more education and not formal education, just like world education, life education I gain, and the more I'm able to navigate things, I would love to give back in that way and hopefully, serve as not a guide to someone, but a partner, a co-conspirator in their growth. And I think Sister Mentors has allowed me to see mentorship in such a non-transactional way, in a real intimate and intentional, way. And I think I would love to participate in that. Yeah.
It was very wisely stated. I like that co-conspirator in their growth. Well, thank you so much, Margie, for taking the time to letting me get to know you and, telling us about your journey with Sister Mentors and, much success to you and everything else you're going to accomplish in the future. I can't wait to keep up with you and see what else you're going to master. For more information on Sister Mentors, a project of EduSeed, please visit sistermentors.org. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn as Sister Mentors. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts, and don't be afraid to share. This podcast was produced by Rugged Angel Productions for Sister Mentors.